Browns minicamp weekend gets things rolling. It's Freddie Kitchens as the head coach with the 2019 rookies in town for the weekend. Freddie Kitchens was asked, what do you expect to see from a rookie minicamp and what can you gain from it?
Really, we're trying to see some what kind of ability from a skill set point of view they have, and really knowledge. This is not a physical camp, so you're trying to get knowledge and see what they can retain from the meeting room to the practice field.
What stands out about Greedy when you see him on the field for the field?
He's smooth. He transitions well from his back pedal and can close on the ball. He's long, of course, and then he competes.
What's the skill set of the running back from Pitt? What did you like about it?
Well, he demonstrated, some ability to stick his foot in the ground and get north quickly. His hands, he had a couple of drop balls today that I think is very uncharacteristic for him. But he's working to get better. Sometimes you have to evaluate these guys mentally. They're swimming a little bit and how that affects their skill set. And I think he's probably in that mix right now. He'll probably do a lot of studying tonight.
And when Greedy says, what do you know about Cleveland? I know we're going to the Super Bowl. Do you think that's cool when he says stuff like that?
I think I like the confidence. I like the excitement and the passion that he has. But I think that mantra kind of changed today, probably, right? Did he talk to you any today?
Yeah, so. He said you talked to him about it.
Yeah, so we're not in the prediction business, like I told you guys.
So what was your message to him?
Well, that's between him and I, but I don't know how many predictions he'll be making. But he, Greedy, he's a good kid, though. He's a really good kid, and he was just full of excitement. And I like excitement, and I like enthusiasm. So, and he has a lot of both.
I know it's rookie camp. The new kid from Miami, he made a couple plays out there today. Just what do you actually take away from the context of a guy making a play in rookie camp versus the big scope of understanding the situation?
Well, it's better to make a play than not make a play, and that's really the only thing I can say about it right now. He showed out, he showed up, and it was good to see. He made a couple of plays on the ball that he didn't end up with the ball, but he still made the play on the ball. And then he was a factor, and anytime you're a factor, you kind of stand out, and that's a good thing during this time of year.
Philip talks some about Taki playing all three linebackers. At what point do you kind of decide which one we like him at?
I think it'll work itself out. Once we get back with everybody here and stuff like that, and see how the puzzle fits together, it'll work itself out. We're just trying to compete and everybody get better right now in all areas.
So a guy who's known for his physical nature, how does he stand out in an environment where he can't hit?
Well, I think that's the dilemma you have with offensive linemen and defensive linemen. I mean, they can't stand out really right now. So you're really judging the same things with them that you see on tape, and you try to make good decisions based on that. But that's the worst thing about the offseason and the offseason program in general. It's not made to be physical. It's made for the skilled guys to kind of have the advantage. But you can see the aggressiveness and how they get to the ball. And he did that today fairly well.
Hey, Freddie, when the Browns showed the video of you talking to the guys after the picks, and with Greedy, you said something like, you got to tackle sometimes.
Yeah.
It came off as a joke, but I mean, is there like a challenge in there, or kind of poking him about that a little bit?
I don't know. I wasn't joking. He's going to have to tackle some. So when the ball gets out on the edge, we're not going to let him go. So, I don't have a problem. Greedy is going to tackle, and he wants to tackle. He's a willing tackler. That may not all been on tape as an example, but peer pressure gets to him sometimes and gets to our players. And if we have the leaders that I think we have, then he'll tackle.
Over the course of the spring, including when the veterans are in for spring practice, how much are you going to be able to conclude about your team? Or do you almost file and forget when you go into training camp? It's a brand new thing.
Well, I think every segment, you're not really starting over, but you're seeing how much you can retain. But we're not going to find out anything about our team until we hit some adversity. And once we hit some adversity, which is going to happen, I don't know, you try to curate it during training camp, and I don't know how much you can relative to how the season unfolds. But we're going to hit some adversity at some point, and then we'll find out what kind of team we have. And not until then.
Freddie, Webster Slaughter mentioned that he was here and he talked to the team a little bit, and some of the other guys did. you were a Browns fan, why did you bring in a guy like Webster, and what's it like to have him, somebody like that?
Well, we had a lot of those guys around. We had, Webster, Bernie, Mr. Brown. A lot of those guys were here. Ernest Biner, Mac, all those guys were here last night, and they had dinner with our rookies. And we wanted them to see, John and I wanted them to see what it was to be a Cleveland Brown and what it meant to the city, and take it from an experience that somebody had already had. And I think it went really well.
And on that, did you find Jim Brown, even at 82, is just captivating when he speaks in front of a group?
I always I cherish my time that I have around him, that I've had around him for the past year, and that's 83. He'll tell you that too. So, but I cherish that time around him, because you know what he went through in life and in the game of football. I mean, of course, what he means to the city of Cleveland and the Cleveland Brown organization speaks for itself. But he's seen a lot in his time. If you think about 83 years, that covers a lot of history in the country, good and bad. And it's just good to have a resource like that to lean on and talk to, and just to be around and know what he's went through.
Freddie, do you share the history of this team and this program, what it's gone through when you have these rookies that come in that probably don't know much about the Browns other than maybe what happened the last 2 or 3 years?
Well, definitely with the rookies, and we even did it with the veterans. Our first team meeting, we showed them a video of what the Browns meant to the city and what the Browns mean, to the NFL in general, and some of the good times that Cleveland's had in the past. When you talk about 3 AFC championships in the 80s, just knowing what those guys went through to get there, hopefully our guys can feed off of that some. And I know it doesn't hurt to be able to communicate with those guys and to show them what could happen, the potential of happening.